One morning in Tina, Snee the rabbit awoke very hungry. He sniffed around his hole a bit to see if there were any carrots, but he soon found that he had eaten them all up the night before. So he thought he would go over to the patch to get some more. But then he remembered that all the carrots that were left in the field were hard for him to pick, because they had very strong roots. The only way for him to get carrots was to find Tinker Bell and ask him. Snee looked over to Tink's house, but didn't find him in. So he knocked on Swedith's door, which now had a sign saying, "Cleaning Lady of Tina," and said hello.
"Hi, Swedith. I hope I didn't wake you."
"Hi, Snee, old buddy. No, I was just about to get up and do my chores, you know. Gotta keep busy."
You wouldn't know where Tinker Bell is, would you?
"No, I don't. Wait a minute. Come to think of it, I think he's over with Jowls, playing some kind of game. I remember hearing them talk about it."
Gee, thanks, Swedith. I'll check over there.
"See you later, Snee, old buddy."
Bye-bye.
So Snee took off as fast as his little legs would carry him. After a while he came to Beanbag Pond, and then finally arrived at Jowl's house on the other side of the pond. At first he didn't see anybody, but he heard a funny bumping sound every now and then, and followed the sounds until he saw Tinker Bell, Thumbelina, and Jowls all playing near Lena's pool. Snee stopped and watched. The game they were playing was Bump Bump. In this game, the object was to bump the champion out of his circle. If you bumped whoever was in the circle, then you got in the circle, and everybody tried to bump you out of it. Right now, Thumbelina was sitting lazily in the middle, and Tinker Bell was lumbering toward her, ready for the charge. Jowls was waiting his turn. Tinker Bell was singing to himself as he rumbled along the ground.
"Oh, it's fun to play a bump bump, to bump bump all the time. I bump and bump and bump and bump, it makes me feel sublime."
Tink charged and slammed into Thumbelina with a loud thump, but he hardly moved her at all.
"You gotta try harder, Tink."
"I thought I gave you a real good bump that time, Lena."
"Nope. Hey, here's Snee."
"Hi, Snee, what's up?"
Oh, hi, everybody. Don't let me disturb your game.
"You wanna play too?"
No, I'd better not. I'm too little to bump anyone.
"Well, back to the game. See you later, Snee."
Maybe I'll watch you play.
So Snee sat down and watched the three animals bump each other around. He was too timid to ask Tink to get him carrots now that Tink was in the middle of his favorite game. He decided that he would wait until they finished before asking Tinker Bell. While he was watching, Snee began to feel lonely and sad. All those big animals were pounding each other away, and all he could do was watch because he was so little. Even Monk and Chimp were big enough to play Bump Bump, although now they were romping gaily by themselves in their tree house. So Snee softly and slowly got up and walked over to Beanbag Pond to be sad by himself. Later that morning, Snee was still sitting by himself, dipping his little white feet into Beanbag Pond and thinking, when he heard a funny grunting sound, and every now and then he heard somebody singing.
La 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 la.
He looked up and saw Swedith, grunting and chirping, bounding merrily through the woods as she always did in the morning, performing her chores of cleaning Lady of Tina. Swedith looked at Snee and crooned jovially.
"Hi, Snee. How are you?"
Snee looked up very sadly and said softly,
Hello, Swedith. I'm feeling sad today. Very sad.
"Why, Snee, what on earth is the matter?"
I don't know. Every now and then I feel very out of place on Tina.
"Why is that, Snee, old buddy?"
Well, you know that on Tina there's a whole lot of real big animals. Tinker Bell, Thumbelina, Jowls, and even Monk and Chimp. All of them are all fat and big and round and shake when they walk. In fact, everybody on Taina is all big and fat and round and shaky, except me. I'm tiny and little and skinny and scamper madly to and fro. I ask you, did you ever see Tinkerbell scamper madly to and fro?
No, come to think of it, I never did. But Snee, just because they're all fat and dribbly doesn't mean it's good to be like them. They all like you even though you're real tiny. And I'm not real fat, just tiny little fat.
I know, Swedith, and I'm glad you're not fat like Tinkerbell and Thumbelina, because I like to talk to you, and sometimes I get embarrassed talking to those fat animals.
Now, Snee, you shouldn't pay so much attention to blubber. Remember, there's room for all of us on Taina. Big fat, little fat, and little tiny. You gotta remember that.
I know, Swedith, but sometimes...
He stopped in the middle of the sentence, because right before his very eyes he saw a sudden rush of bubbles in the pond below his feet, and a strange current rushing to and fro. Swedith was puzzled and looked down to see what was happening. Suddenly, out popped a little sad-eyed turtle. He popped right out of the water and landed on the wet ground next to the rabbit. He shook himself off vigorously and looked around him. Swedith and Snee were too startled to speak. They had no idea there was still another animal on Taina. But the turtle went up to them and spoke, or rather he whispered in a very strange voice.
Hi, my name's Turt the Turtle. Is this your place, Taina?
Why, yes, and my name is Snee, and this is Swedith.
Well, I've come a long way from home, and I'm mighty tired. Do you think I could stay here?
Sure, Turt. We're always happy to have new friends on Taina. We have to have more animals to work in the garden.
Gee, thanks. I think I'll like it here. Are all the animals on Taina little and tiny like you?
Alas, I'm the only one, except you now.
Gosh, that's too bad. I always find that everybody around me is all big and fat. Gee, but you're not big and fat, and we're both tiny things.
Hey, I just got an idea. Now that there are two tiny little animals on Taina, you can form a club. You only have to have two to make a club, you know.
Gee, that's right.
And then you can have your own parties and games just for tiny little things.
That sounds very nice.
And so there were two tiny animals on Taina, Snee and Turt. They formed a club called Tiny Things of Taina Together, or TTTT, and they invited Swedith to help them get things set up. Swedith told them that they should invite all the big fat round animals to come and visit as often as they liked, so that nobody would have hurt feelings. And Snee and Turt agreed. Thus there were two types of animals on Taina, the tiny little ones and the big fat round ones. They played together and drank together just as before, but now Snee was happier and more secure because he had somebody just as tiny as himself to play with. Swedith was very happy that there were now two tiny things on Taina.